I got new glasses today and I'm still not used to them, so try not to spend the entire time staring at them in the screen. There we go. So yeah, August wrap up time. August was an amazing reading month for me. I read loads, but that wasn't really what made it good. Like, I'm very much a quality over quantity person, but I read some absolutely amazing stuff. There was some stuff I was looking forward to. So I read 14 books last month, which for me is a lot. It's the most I've read in 15 books actually. It's the most I've read in a month this year. It was helped by the fact that I did have some time off with the school holidays. I had some time off work with the kids and things like that. So yeah, let's get to it. So the first book that I read this month was Impact by Nikki Markham. So this was my first sapphic read for the month. So FF romance, BDSM based contemporary, and this was one that I read off Kindle Unlimited. I saw Jack on the same page talking about it on Instagram, and it sounded really good. Basically, one of the heroines is going to meet up with her friends in a club, accidentally goes to the wrong address and ends up in a BDSM club, and she sees one of the women who is on stage performing and is entranced, decides to kind of explore, hang out there a bit more, and yeah, then from there. Do have to say, trigger warning for biphobia. Yeah, one of them, she really experiences some horrible things from her friends, so just be aware of that. I would say though, if it's not something that does trigger you, it is worth looking at, just purely, you know, for that as an educational reason. Then the next book that I read was Diamond Fire by Ilona Andrews. So I was continuing my Hidden Legacy reread that I started in July. This one is the novella. So the first 3 books are from Nevada's point of view. She's the eldest sibling, and this is the bridge. So it starts with Nevada's point of view and then transitions into Catalina's. She is the middle child. So Hidden Legacy series is sort of urban fantasy, sort of paranormal romance, based in an alternate version of our world. So some things are quite recognisable, like Instagram and things like that. The places, it's set in Texas, and so all the places are very recognisable places. It's just that they have magic. I really enjoyed this one. Actually, kind of more than I was expecting, because it's just a novella. It's very much just kind of like detective style. So yeah, Catalina going, solving something, and yeah, love it. Great to be back to. Then next up, I read Fair Game by Patricia Briggs. So this is the 3rd book in the Alpha and Omega series, but I'm actually reading that series in line with the Mercy Thompson series. So it's set in the same universe, and I'm reading them kind of in time order together. So this series follows Charles and Anna. They are both werewolves. Yeah, I really love this one. It's just great to see kind of how their lives fit into things. Kind of the world story was really good as well. So with these series, they do follow kind of the same characters in each book, which is where it goes kind of urban fantasy line rather than paranormal romance. But definitely enjoyed it, and looking forward to carrying on. I think the next one's back to being a Mercy book. Yeah. Then the next book I read was my second sapphic book of the month, and this was Sealed with a Bite by Ariel. This is the Night Star Shifters series, book 3. It's a Kindle Unlimited sapphic paranormal romance series that I've been working my way through. They're all Fated Mates books, so you know exactly what you're getting. So the wolves can tell if someone is their mate when they meet them. And this particular book, one of the heroines was a wolf from the pack and one was a witch who was on the run from her coven. I really like this dynamic. It's my absolute favourite of the series so far. Really enjoyed it. Yeah, great relationship between them, the different things that the characters were going through, and just the dynamic of it being a witch. The first two have been a wolf and a human, and so the different dynamic of it being a witch and her being aware of the bond as well. Just really enjoyed it. Then the next book that I read was Dominance Never Dies by Lexi Blake. So this is the 11th book in the Masters and Mercenaries series, which is a BDSM erotic romantic suspense series based around a security firm that a lot of the heroes in the stories work for. So this was number 11 in the series, and the hero in this one is Case. And yeah, it's got about him going through some stuff. So he actually met the heroine in an earlier book, and there was a lot of attraction, but then some mistrust happened. They both had reasons to doubt each other. And in this one they're pulled back together and have to work together on something that will very much help both of them. I had put off reading Dominance Never Dies, not for long, just for a few weeks longer than I would have done, because I had seen someone comment on Instagram that they love this series, but this particular book they're just not fussed with. And I'd been really worried, but I absolutely loved it. Yeah, it was really good. I adore this world, and I absolutely cannot wait to read the next one. I'm so excited. So then the next one that I read was The Intimacy Experiment by Rosie Danan. So I read The Roommate a very long time ago, and I got this one when it came out, and I just haven't read it. It's been slowly kind of working its way towards the top of my own unread list, and I kind of assumed I'd get to it in a few months. But then I saw someone share a short story that Rosie Danan had written involving the main characters from both books, and which is set between the two. And I read it and I loved it. It was pure smut of a short story. It was fantastic, and it just made me really want to read this one. So this one, the heroine is a former porn star, so she features very heavily in The Roommate, if you have read that one. And the hero is a rabbi, which is an interesting combination. They're working together to deliver an education program at his synagogue. And yeah, I was really surprised just quite how much I love this. There is a lot about Judaism, which I found really interesting because I knew very little about it, if I'm honest. There's some of the stuff that Naomi had been through with her background as a porn star and just trying to be accepted for who she is, but also not wanting to be made to feel ashamed of what she's done in the past was amazing. Also bisexual rep, she's bisexual, so always nice to have that representation in there. But yeah, absolutely fantastic. I can't believe I put it off so long, really. So then after that I continued my Hidden Legacy reread with Sapphire Flames. I discovered when I went to add my reread on Storygraph that I had marked this as 4 stars last time. Now I'm assuming this is because I was using Goodreads at the time, and you can only give whole star ratings, and I'd meant it to be a 4.5 or something like that. Anyway, needless to say, after my reread I have corrected this to the 5 stars that it should be. So this is Catalina's first main book, and it's the start of her adventures with Alessandro. So we get introduced to him as a character quite a lot. With how this series works, each of the books has their own distinct plot that they're looking at, and each of the trilogies has a plot as well, plus there's kind of an overarching one. The family dynamic in this absolutely makes it for me. Some of the side characters their cousins in particular are just amazing. And I really, really like in this one Catalina building a friendship, because I think strong female characters often aren't shown to be building friends or to have female friends that they really can rely on. And so the fact that she starts to build a friendship in this, I love. The main thing that annoyed me with this book when I read it the first time was the ending, because it pretty much killed me. And what killed me was then the wait for the next book, which I then read on release day. Happily though, this time it was a reread, so I finished it and I went straight on to the next book. So yeah, Emerald Blaze was the next book I read. I was actually really nervous to read this because this was my favourite book in 2020. There were others that I would kind of count out there as well, but if you had to ask me to pick one, this was it. And I didn't know how much of that was the wait, how much because I had been absolutely desperate to read it after reading the book before. But yeah, I was not disappointed. My jaw was aching from how much I was smiling reading this. It just made me feel so good. The little moments in it, the relationships between all the characters. Catalina is amazing. So the three sisters, I love Nevada. She's fantastic. But Catalina, I just get. She has so many things in common with me. She has, her magic power is just really cool. And the sarcastic craziness that is Alessandro, he is just amazing. And yeah, this book was just all the amazingness that I remembered, and more. I will say, if you do pick up this book for the first time, obviously reading it in order in the series, and you get to the end and you go, what was that epilogue? There is a short story on Ilona Andrews' website called The Cool Ant, and I very much recommend reading that afterwards. It follows on from the epilogue and solves a few things from there. But the good news is you now don't need to wait till the next book, so that's fantastic. I, however, did need to wait a little bit longer because I finished my reread while I was on holiday, so I wanted to pick up something else from Kindle Unlimited just for my last day on holiday, and so I picked up Go Deep by Rilzy Adams. So this is a friends to lovers contemporary romance, and she is an erotic writer who has basically started tanking with her books because of lack of experience and lack of interest in sex. So she needs to get someone to help her out and remind her what she should be writing about, and enlists the help of her lifelong best friend with it. And obviously things happen and feelings start to get in the way. I really loved it. It absolutely hit what I wanted in terms of something short, something super steamy, and just absolutely fantastic. So yeah, I definitely recommend that one. Then while I was on holiday, my library reservation of Storm Echo had come in. So this is book 21 in the Psy Changeling series by Nalini Singh, and it released at the end of July. Because it's only out in hardback at the moment and all of mine are paperbacks, I borrowed it from my library. I was able to reserve it before it came out, but unfortunately by the time my reservation came in I was away, so I went to pick that up as soon as I came back from holiday. This one is a romance between a Psy and a Changeling. So this is set in kind of a future different version of the world that we live in. So some of the places are familiar, but a lot of the technology is very different. And you get the Psy who have psychic abilities and the Changelings who can shift into various different animals. So he is a Psy with some quite dangerous powers, and he's part of quite a dangerous family. and she is a changeling healer. So she very much has a drive to protect, and she's from a pack that has fallen apart. They meet each other by chance and then keep running into each other at various points. I really loved a lot of this was set in San Francisco, which is where a lot of the earlier books are. So there was time with the Dark River pack. A lot of the earlier characters were in there. Mercy was in there. I love Mercy. She's one of my absolute favourites from the series. So yeah, I really loved that side of things. And yeah, you know, dangerous brooding sigh is always a good thing in these books. So then the next book that I read was Ruby Fever. I read this day of release from start to finish because this was my most anticipated book of the year. So I managed to finish work. I didn't take the day off work, which I was kind of gutted about. But yeah, I sat down and did that. So this is the last book in Catalina's trilogy in the Hidden Legacy series, and it's the last book in this series that they are publishing with their current publisher. So they are hoping to continue and write Arabella's trilogy, so she's the youngest sibling, but it's not confirmed yet. So that meant that this book had to tie up a lot of plot lines, and it had a lot of action in it, but I really loved that it still had a lot of those little moments. It still had those moments of their cousins being themselves and hanging out with their friends and the little relationship parts and just finding out about themselves. The reveals were great, the fight scenes were great, every little bits of relationships, and the setup for Arabella was so good that I will probably cry if she doesn't get books. The setup for her has been amazing. I love this. After 2 years of waiting, the wait was absolutely worth it. And yeah, the only thing I'm wondering now is when I reread it, basically. So yeah. Then after that, I actually had started this before Ruby Fever was released, but obviously I dropped it during the release. But yeah, my next book was Maker's Curse by Trudi Canavan. I read this one because it was my oldest book on my shelf, so the book that I had owned the longest without reading. I'm trying to read that every month. So this is the 4th book in the Millennium's Rule series by Trudi Canavan. It's a fantasy series. It borders more on like the romance plot end of fantasy, but it's very definitely fantasy, not fantasy romance. So I read the first 3 books in this series 4 years ago. I deliberately waited because I was really massively into Trudi Canavan books at the time. I knew I'd get annoyed if I had to wait for later books in the series. So I waited until all 3 were out, read them, got to the end of the 3rd book, and she said that she had some ends that she just felt she hadn't tied up enough, so there was going to be a 4th book. And then obviously there was waiting for the release, then there was the price of the Kindle book because it was only out in hardback, and then there'd been such a delay, there was less urgency. So I finally got a copy of the book for Christmas last year and just hadn't got around to reading it. So these books are set in a very cool universe. There's lots of different worlds that all connect together, and the source of magic is creativity. So people generate magic by being creative, which I find a really interesting concept. And you get people who are powerful in using magic, and you get people who are powerful in creating magic or making it. So this carries on with the same 2 main characters that there have been throughout the series. I'm focusing on some of the challenges that were caused by the overarching plot. I was really worried how much of the world I'd remember, how much I'd get into this, but it was great. I actually remembered quite a lot, and I remembered enough that this filled in the right details for me. I love the characters, that, you know, the way they interact with each other is fantastic, and it was really nice to say, yes, I do still love Trudi Canavan's books. even though I haven't read any for a while, they are still fantastic, and she is still an author that I can recommend. So really, really glad that I finally picked this up. So then the next book that I read was Sanctum by Lexi. So this is the first novella that goes alongside the Masters and Mercenaries series. It's actually set between books 4 and 5 of the series, so a little further back than where I am, but I decided that I was going to start reading them, getting all those little in-between plots. So the hero in this one is actually the manager of Sanctum, the BDSM club that the series is based around, and it's kind of a second chance with someone who was his sub almost in an earlier life for him before he moved to Sanctum. And it was fantastic. I wasn't sure how it was going to be with the vibe, but actually with it being the novella, it gave it the chance to just focus on them and not go too crazy with anything else. And yeah, it really worked really well. Their relationship was great. They didn't just kind of fling themselves at each other and pretend that none of their problems would ever exist again. So I really liked that. It was all kind of built out really well, and it's just nice to see the characters from the main series just sort of appearing in their little incidental roles. And yeah, it made me really excited to read more of the novellas from the series. So then the next book that I read actually released on the same day as Ruby Fever, and that was Love on the Brain. Even if I got them both on the same day, I would have read Ruby Fever first, but as it was, I got this pre-ordered from Waterstone, so it did take a few days to arrive. So this is by Hazelwood, and it's contemporary romance, and so this is Hazelwood wrote The Love Hypothesis, which is obviously very famous. So this is some scientists, researchers working for NASA, and with NASA. So we have got engineering, we have got neuroscience, we have got all sorts of geeky goodness going on. Our heroine is a neuroscience researcher who is basically getting the chance for her project of a lifetime. Unfortunately, she discovers that her co-lead on the project is someone that she had a falling out with at grad school because he just hated her and just wouldn't give her the time of day. So she has to work out how to work with him and deal with all the other things that seem to be going on with this project that should be her dream. I absolutely loved it. Women in STEM, always a fantastic thing. I have a STEM background, so it's always something that I just love to see. I really loved that, you know, she's an absolute like neuroscience geek but has purple hair and a ton of piercings, and that's absolutely fine. So yeah, just really loved it. There are some bits in it where you can kind of see for a while quite easily where it's going to happen, but actually that's part of the fun of it, is kind of being able to step away and have that perspective that the characters can't have because they're too involved in it. So yeah, really, really enjoyed that one. And then my final book of the month was a bit of a surprise for me, and I just suddenly decided that, hey, I fancied reading it. I read it really quickly. So I read Lover Reborn by J.R. Ward, which is the 10th, I believe, book in the Black Dagger Brotherhood series. So part of the reason this surprised me is I actually bought this back in April. I read the 9th book in the series back in March, after a bit of a break after the one before. So again, this is one that I'd sort of assumed was just going to stay on my list until it hit the oldest on my shelf and I had to read it. But I was suddenly in the mood and it happened. And I really, really enjoyed it. Ended up reading it over 2 days, which, considering it's a 600-page book, was quite impressive. I was off work, which helps, but I do still have kids, so I was still out doing things during the day. But yeah, so Black Dagger Brotherhood are all vampires, and they are kind of in the shadows, but they are protecting people against the lessers. This is a series, again, you'd have to read it in order. There are kind of darker aspects to these. So the hero in this one is someone who's experienced a lot of grief. He was mated previously, and she unfortunately was killed, and he has just felt like he can never move on from that. And yeah, he finds someone who he has known in the past, and things start to grow between them. There were also some quite strong subplots for some of the previous couples, and some things that they were having. One thing that did interest me with this was it did go on over the course of a year, so you had kind of lots of little scenes, and it did mean that there were some stages where you didn't necessarily see like the development of things, but it meant you got to see the after effects. So it wasn't just pretending everything could move on really quickly. It was very, things can go wrong, this is the effect that they have. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I'm really glad that I waited until I was in the right mood for it and didn't try and force myself to read it earlier just because I thought I should. And yeah, it was really good, and I'm very much excited for the next one in this series. So yeah, there you go. That's the 15 books that I read in August. As I say, I absolutely loved it as a month. Let me know if you've read any of these, and if so, what your thoughts are, or if you're planning to read any, and just in general how your reading month was. And I will see you soon.